Welcome to another episode of Serial Streamers. And if you're wondering what is Serial Streamers, who am I, who's this woman in front of my screen? Well, Serial Streamers is a virtual true crime TV club that I created because I'm out here watching all these wild true crime documentaries, and I know all of you are as well. But a lot of times we don't have somebody to talk about it with. Maybe we have a partner or a bestie who's willing to talk about it for a couple of minutes, but they're not as into true crime content as we are. So that is what Serial Streamers, the virtual TV club, is. We are out here watching these documentaries. I do a recap on my YouTube channel at Jami on Air, as well as on my podcast, Murderish, which is available in all podcast players. And so I do the recap, and then I quickly go to my social media, post clips, and then we talk about it in the comments. We talk about these wild documentaries. I give all my hot takes, my unpopular opinions, thoughts, theories, and I want you to do the same in my social media comments. So make sure you're following me on TikTok and Instagram specifically. I'm at Jami on Air. That's Jami on Air on all platforms. Make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel. That is at Jami on Air as well. And make sure you're following my podcast, Murderish, which is available in all podcast apps. So you can get the video version of the Serial Streamers episodes on my YouTube channel. You can get the audio version on my podcast, Murderish. Then come to my social media comments and we will discuss. All right, let's get into this one. But before we do, I want to offer a bit of a trigger warning because there are a lot of sensitive topics discussed in this documentary. So I want to warn you about child exploitation as well as child abuse. So if those things are triggering for you, just take caution before watching or listening to this one. The documentary that we're going to be talking about today is Bad Influence, The Dark Side of Kidfluencing. And this is a 2025 Netflix 3-part docuseries. And this one was a hard watch for me for a few reasons. One, because I have never enjoyed child content, like child-focused content. I mean, it's just, I have children of my own. I had to watch all the cringy TV shows, from Barney to Dora, all the way, which Dora was educational, so I didn't mind Dora because Dora actually taught my middle child, my daughter, Drew, how to count to 10 in Spanish. So I can't fault her for that. But these shows, I've already been subjected to watching these shows at home. The last thing I want to do is watch child-focused content on YouTube. So that's number one. Number two, I'm also not into family vloggers, like the Ruby Frankie of it all. Now, obviously she's a real shitty example, but I just find the family-focused, child-focused content so cringy. That's just me. So I found this docuseries particularly hard to get through. But then obviously as you get into the meat and potatoes of this story, then it's really hard to watch because you're seeing all these kids who are being downright exploited, in my opinion. And I know I'm not the only one who thinks that, by this woman, Tiffany Smith. And we're going to get into all the details of that. So this docuseries was a rough one, but let me know what you thought. So this particular docuseries is specifically about Tiffany Smith. She's the mom of one daughter named Piper Rockelle. And the docuseries is really about them, but it's also about Piper's squad, her YouTube squad, which we'll get into the details of what that is. Tiffany Smith had Piper Rockelle in 2007. The dad was not in the picture. And from a young age, I want to say 3 years old, Piper was a pageant girl because of course. And she started winning pageants a lot. A lot of people described her as very outgoing from the beginning as a child. And really that Piper had something special. And Piper, according to a lot of people who knew her, just loved the attention. She just kind of ate it up. And apparently her mom did too, but we'll get into that. But as these pageant girls tend to do, Piper was also parading around in a bikini on stage, the spray tan, the makeup, all of it, the whole cringy, disturbing, in my opinion, works. Because I just no child should be paraded around in an adult, such an adult way. I despise pageants and pageant moms for that matter. And at some point when Piper was young, I think around 12 years old, she was featured on a podcast called YSB Now. I think that was her mom's podcast. Maybe I wasn't listening very well during that part of the docuseries, but I think YSB Now was her mom's podcast. But in any event, Piper was featured on it and really started to build an audience from there. That episode apparently did very well. Tiffany recognized there's something special in her daughter. And then Piper started to really build an audience on an app called Musical.ly. And I guess Musical.ly was really popular a few years ago, kind of before I think TikTok got big. And a lot of younger kids were building an audience on the app, and Piper was no exception. She was around 14, the documentary said, when she was building this audience on Musical.ly. And then you have the TikToks of the world, the Twitters of the world, and other social media apps that really started to skyrocket and take off from there. And it was described in this docuseries that Tiffany Smith, Piper's mom, was always filming, kind of like Ruby Frankie. Like she always had a camera in her daughter's face, just capturing every moment. And reality TV was also really starting to take off during this time. And around that time, Piper was cast on a reality show called Dance Twins alongside her mom, Tiffany. And I don't know if that was I've never watched Dance Twins. I don't know if it's kind of like Dance Moms or what, but it features kids, I guess, and their moms dancing. I don't really know. But this was sort of Piper's first introduction to working on TV. Also in the docuseries, somebody alerts us to the audience of the fact that Piper wasn't in school, like from the age of 8 on. Like she was never in school. She just wasn't going to school because apparently she was too busy filming this content with her mom. And that was very alarming for a lot of people. And it is alarming. And we'll get into more details of this. But it was also described in the docuseries that Piper and her squad, her YouTube squad, weren't really meeting the minimum hours required for kids to get their education. So this is very alarming because Tiffany, and maybe the other parents can be blamed as well, were really putting content creation and clicks and money before these kids' education, which is alarming. And Tiffany was completely obsessed with Piper's views and followers on social media and YouTube. Like she saw almost immediately that there is an opportunity here to make a lot of money off of this little girl. In 2017, Tiffany and Piper moved to Los Angeles because, of course, I mean, Los Angeles really is the hub, the mecca, the entertainment mecca. And this is where a lot of influencers are going to want to move so that they can sort of, be in the industry, be amongst other creators and, get more opportunities to monetize. And this was when Piper was 10 years old when she moved to LA. Then the docuseries introduces this guy, this young guy. He looks to be like in his early 20s. His name is Hunter Hill. And he's presented on Piper's YouTube channel as her older brother in like this fake content. I call it fake. They were acting. So Piper's mom would film Piper in all these contrived scenarios, whether it be her having a crush on a boy or having drama with a friend or getting her first kiss or all these cringy things. And Hunter, basically, I think a lot of Piper's audience really truly believed that Hunter was her actual brother. But in reality, he was her fake brother. And also in reality, he was Tiffany's much younger boyfriend. Hunter was 20 years old, so he was very young. I don't know how old Tiffany was at this time, but Piper Rockelle was like 14, 15 years old. So that puts Tiffany at least in her 30s, and she's dating this 20-year-old, which, listen, do you? Not sure what you want with a dude that young, but also it's just cringy that he's introduced as Piper's fake older brother, but in reality, he's like boning her mom. And fairly quickly on into Tiffany and Hunter's relationship, he moves into the house with her and Piper. And it was around this time that Tiffany starts forming Piper's supporting cast of characters, if you will, that will be featured on her YouTube channel, her very popular YouTube channel. And she starts calling them a squad. And it's described in the docuseries that, Tiffany, all she ever really did was steal other people's ideas or mimic other people's ideas and then make them her own and apply them to Piper to make money because she saw that other people like, I don't know, Logan Paul, Jake Paul, those guys had squads, or some other popular YouTubers had called themselves a squad. And she saw that that was really good for SEO, and the algorithm liked it. And so she starts calling Piper and her supporting cast of younger kids the squad. And these are all similarly aged children to Piper. And again, Tiffany was just having them, Tiffany and Hunter, I should say, were having these kids like, okay, go in the corner and pretend you're going to kiss, pretend you're making out, or pretend you're fighting, or you have drama with this person, or pull a prank on this one. Like everything was contrived for clicks, views, and money. And eventually Piper gets cast in this show called Manny. And it's about this man who is a Manny. So instead of a nanny, it's a Manny who takes care of these kids. And Piper's one of those kids. And apparently there was one time when Tiffany, Piper's mom, storms onto the stage, and she's like completely pissed off, as somebody describes it in the docuseries, that her daughter, that somebody else got more likes than her daughter. I don't know if this is on social media or what the heck it was, but in any event, Tiffany throws this full-blown Karen fit, and she removes Piper from the show. And she's like, yeah, no, we're not filming anymore. And there goes that opportunity because she's just acting like a Karen. There's also a person named Patience who is in the docuseries, and Patience is Tiffany's younger sister. So then that would make Patience Piper's aunt. But Patience and Tiffany have had a fractured relationship since they were kids. Patience describes it that, after their parents divorced, Tiffany got more and more aggressive, and eventually they just had a complete breakdown in their relationship as sisters. However, Patience is in a relationship with another woman, and that woman has a daughter. And so Patience has a stepdaughter who then would be Piper's cousin by marriage. And basically Tiffany sees dollar signs, I think, and she sees this cousin and how cute she is. And so that cousin becomes a member of Piper's YouTube squad. So that's kind of what brought Tiffany and her sister Patience back into having some semblance of a relationship. And Patience really saw this as a door being open, like an opportunity for her to have another chance at having a close relationship with her sister. So for a time, Patience and her wife and Patience's stepdaughter are kind of in good with Tiffany because their daughter is in the squad with Piper. And Tiffany is absolutely bankrolling the money from these kids' videos. But it's described in the documentary that these other kids really weren't making a dime. It was really all, I want to say Piper, but it was really Tiffany making all the money, allegedly. And these other kids really weren't making any money because they're being featured on Piper's YouTube channel, not their own. But a lot of the parents were tolerant of this for a time because they're like, well, and of course, Tiffany would push this idea on them. She'd be like, look, your kid's getting all this exposure. They're on Rockelle's YouTube channel. I mean, this is like one of the biggest channels out there. They're getting all this exposure. So she would explain it away that way. But it was really Tiffany making all the money at that time. But eventually the other squad members do start their own YouTube channels. But immediately they turn over their logins and basically the keys to the castle over to Hunter, Tiffany's toy boy, because they were told to. So basically Tiffany was kind of like, it's described that like Tiffany was the mastermind. Hunter was below her, and Tiffany's like, yeah, you can start your own YouTube channels, but you got to turn over all your logins to Hunter, so that now Hunter has all this control over their YouTube channels. And Hunter is, before that, and during the whole documentary and during this whole, Piper Rockelle YouTube craze, he's working as Piper's YouTube editor, producer, camera operator. He's the guy holding the camera, helping to produce, contrived scenes for the kids to play out. But he is really, it looks like, being controlled by Tiffany. Tiffany is the ultimate behind the scenes boss of everything. And it seems that Hunter is really good at figuring out which hashtags to use, which thumbnails will drive the most traffic, what, is going to help with the SEO, and get more viewers and engagement to Piper's YouTube channel. And he was seemingly very good at that because he did help Piper's stuff just blow up and go viral. So I think the other squad members' parents were like, oh, well, I'm just thinking for them. Like, in their minds, they're like, well, if he's doing such a good job for Piper, of course, we're going to hand over all of our logins. Like he's going to do the same thing for us. But never did they think that Hunter and Tiffany would eventually turn on them and use that power in a negative way. And we'll get into that in a bit. Eventually, Tiffany, as well as other squad members' moms, they realize that they can purchase or rent a much larger, more posh home if they put their money together versus like trying to buy it on their own. And if they do that, they'll all move in together and then they'll have this beautiful place to shoot a bunch of content with the kids. So that's exactly what they do. Tiffany gets together with at least one, maybe two other squad members' parents or moms, and they move in together in this big house in the Hollywood Hills. And that's kind of the backdrop to all of the future Piper, Rockelle, and squad members' YouTube content. And the kids are filming at all hours of the day. I mean, they're at this big house getting 2 to 3 hours of sleep, according to at least one squad member. And they're basically going to bed early in the morning, like 1 o'clock in the morning, let's say, get a couple hours sleep, wake up, go to school, come back home only to do it all over again and film into all hours of the night. And a lot of these kids, like I said earlier, were not meeting the minimum number of hours that they needed for their education. And they also report, not getting proper breaks, meals were missed. So this is a huge, huge issue. And I don't know much about child acting, but I do know that there are Coogan laws and there are child labor laws and all these, laws that kids have to get there has to be like a teacher on set or a tutor, and they have to get a certain number of hours of education. They can't just like go film for 14 hours a day and miss meals and get no education. But when it comes to child influencers, it's the wild, wild west. And these laws are really not set up to protect them. I think it's more for like child actors and other types of entertainment. At some point, Tiffany ends up with over 60 rescue cats at this big mansion that they're living in, or house, or whatever it is. It's big. And I think this says something about Tiffany's psyche. I am a huge animal lover, and I too have rescued animals off the streets and sometimes kept them until they died, like years later when they got old. So I'm a huge animal lover. I totally get the concept of rescuing. But I think that when it gets to a certain point of like chaos, where you're sort of in over your head and these cats are sort of like taking over the house and making it unsanitary, the cost just to feed them and buy them litter and get them veterinary care is probably thousands of dollars per month. And they talk about in this docuseries that like, these kids, Piper and some of the squad members Tiffany's making them like bleach the baseboards and clean at all hours of the night to keep the house sanitary from these cats. So again, huge animal lover, love the idea of rescuing cats. But I do think it says something about Tiffany's psyche. I don't know what, because that's not my area of expertise, but that she's willing to bring that level of chaos into her home where her child lives. Then they talk about in this documentary that at some point, Tiffany Smith, Piper's mom, starts creating content where the family dog, a pug, I think his name is Lenny, starts saying really mean things. Like Lenny, this dog, I think his name is Lenny. We're just going to go with that. The pug, Lenny, he basically becomes a squad member. Like he's basically featured in a lot of the content. And you'll see scenes where Tiffany's holding the dog. She's kind of like out of the camera, but you can see her hands. And she presents the dog, and the dog is like an actor in the scene. But the dog, his only purpose is to be mean to the other kids, Piper and the other squad members. But we all know that Tiffany's the one making the voice of the dog, coming up with the things to say, but it's only mean shit that she's saying to these kids. So she's basically using the dog as a vehicle to bully the squad members and make them feel like crap about themselves and make them feel insecure because she's calling them names and she's using this persona as the dog to like create fractures within the squad group's friendship. Like it's just bizarre. But again, that tells us something about her psyche, I think. Like it's almost like Tiffany wanted to say these mean things to the kids that she was thinking, but the only rational way that she thought she could do it is to make the dog do it. Like, oh, haha, it's just the dog. It's just a character. It's all pretend. None of it's real. Don't take it seriously. But in reality, like these probably were her internal thoughts. And then it gets really icky in this documentary because one of the squad members talks about Tiffany's weird and disturbing and inappropriate fascination with this young boy. He's a squad member. I want to say he was like 11 or 12. Tiffany, his name's Gavin, and Tiffany was uncomfortably, grossly kind of fascinated with this kid. And one of the squad members in this documentary talks about how Tiffany would flirt with Gavin. Again, Tiffany is Piper's mom. She's probably in her 30s. This is a very young minor. Like, it just full stop, he's a minor. And she would flirt with him, apparently, and she just had this sick fascination with him. And it's you can start to see where this documentary is going when they start talking about her fascination with Gavin, and it ain't good. So Corinne, she's one of I think she's the original squad member, and she was one of Piper's best friends from an early age. She was featured in a lot of Piper's content, but eventually Corinne's mom had enough. Like she'd heard enough weird stories about what was going on during filming, how Tiffany was doing weird things and she was erratic and toxic, and they wanted out. So Corinne's mom had finally had enough. She pulls Corinne off the squad. And basically from there, Tiffany forces, according to Corinne and other squad members, Tiffany forces all the other squad members, including Piper, to basically blacklist Corinne, and they all have to unfollow her on social media and basically act like she's dead. Like, okay, Corinne left our squad, therefore she doesn't exist. Like, we don't know you, girl. Like, I don't know her, was the vibe. Some of the squad members in this documentary talk about how Tiffany would get wasted and do inappropriate things with the kids. For example, and this is on film, and you can see it when you watch this documentary. It's very uncomfortable, very disturbing. But there's this one scene where they're filming and Tiffany basically forces herself on one of the boys, Reagan. His name is Reagan Beast. He's a squad member. He's 17 years old at the time. She forces herself on him and plants a really long kiss on Reagan. And you can see that his face is just like, what just happened? And that video gets posted. And then, but they start to get backlash. So people are like, what the hell is Tiffany doing? This is gross. Like, this is weird. He's only 17. So I think as soon as Tiffany starts seeing that, oh shit, this is not going well for me, people are wanting to cancel me maybe, the video gets erased inexplicably. Like it's gone. And we find out later that what probably happened was like Tiffany and Hunter were like, oh yeah, let's remove that shit and scrub it from the internet forever because it doesn't look good for Tiffany. And this kid, Reagan, the 17-year-old that she forced herself on in this scene, he is a trans boy. And so it's described in the documentary that Tiffany would ask Reagan inappropriate sexual questions, including, personal questions about his transition. And they also say that, and this made Reagan very uncomfortable. Like he talks in the documentary that this was just not okay. It made him uncomfortable. He by no means wanted Tiffany to force herself on him. And even if he did, but he didn't, but even if he did, he's 17 and she should never be doing that. Let's be clear. But I think it was Reagan who said this in the documentary, but at least one of the squad members said that Tiffany would also give some of the kids alcohol at times. And it's important to note that Tiffany Smith denies all the allegations made in this documentary, and she and Hunter also deny all of the allegations in the subsequent lawsuit, which we're going to get into. And Piper, really Tiffany, is eventually earning $300,000 to $500,000 plus per month. So they are, Tiffany, not they, Tiffany is raking in the dough, all off of her daughter's back. Like this is all off of Piper and Piper's squad. So Tiffany has become a very wealthy woman off of the backs of all these kids and their labor and their time and their exploitation, in my opinion. And again, like I'd said earlier, Tiffany was really good at just kind of ripping off other viral ideas that worked well for other creators and applying them to Piper and the squad. And so she did these things called crush videos, and I found these so ick. Like so fucking cringe. But they did these crush videos because crush videos were really popular on YouTube. They would go viral. So basically what it would be two content creators who get together and they get into a ship or a relationship, but the kids are calling it a ship. So two content creators would get into a ship, but it wouldn't be real. It's not a real relationship. It's a contrived relationship just for clicks and views and, popularity on YouTube, monetization. And so Tiffany caught on to this. So she starts making Piper and the squad members do all these crush videos where they're in a ship all of a sudden. So, and they would blend the two names together. So kind of like Bennifer, Ben Affleck and J-Lo were like Bennifer. Whoever was in a ship on these YouTube channels, they would blend their names as well. So like, I can't think of one. If Piper was with a guy named Frank, maybe their name would be Prank. I don't freaking know. Like they would just blend their names in a really cringy way. And so the squad members are basically being instructed, I would say forced, to do all these cringy crush videos and act like they were in a ship. And in reality, it would be two squad members who don't even really like each other in that way, like they're just friends, but they're being forced to act out scenes and play like they like each other. Like, oh yeah, we're in a relationship. And they would be forced to talk a lot about, ooh, we might get our first kiss. Oh my gosh. They would tease it on camera because Tiffany and Hunter knew like this is going to blow up. Like I guess when people teased that they were going to like have their first kiss, in these ship or crush videos, that it would go viral. So then you see a lot of the kids saying that, like Piper would come up and be like, ooh, I think I'm going to get my first kiss with my crush, or just all this cringy stuff. Like I just found it so icky. But Tiffany and Hunter are willing to do anything for clicks and views and monetary gain. So they made the kids pretend they're in a relationship and pretend to kiss, pretend to make out, take off their shirts sometimes. The boys, like there was this one scene where this kid like got his shirt wet, so he has to rip it off. And the girl in the scene's like, these are all minors, by the way. So it is all just getting very inappropriate and cringy. And they're making these kids act out scenes that make them kind of seem like they're older than they really are. They're all teenagers, but they're, acting out like adult-like scenes. And there was one person on the documentary who put it really well and basically just said, like, these crush videos made these kids, it violated their innocence, and it's forcing them to act older than they really are. And it's just inappropriate. Then there's this one scene with Tiffany and a couple of the squad members, and it's caught on camera. And there's this kid, Gavin. I guess this is the one that she's like grossly fascinated with. And he's young. He's like 12 years old-ish around this time. He's sitting there and he has a bag of almonds in a Ziploc bag. And Tiffany grossly asks Gavin, can you pass me D's nuts? And he's like, okay. And he hands over the bag of almonds. And it's just, listen, first of all, I've used that joke so many times, but it's also like with other adults. She's asking a young minor child, like she's asking a child, can you pass me D's nuts? It just is giving, I want to be a cool mom, and it's just giving sexual predator. It's giving, I want to be a cool mom and I'm willing to act inappropriately with these kids in order to be a cool mom. Like I'm willing to cross boundaries so that I can fit in with these kids. I don't know. It almost seemed to me that Tiffany was a little envious of the squad and kind of like wanted the kids to like her, and she wanted to be like cool to them. So she would give them alcohol. She would force herself on them, which is not cool by any means. But maybe in her twisted brain, she thought it was. I don't know. And eventually the kids, in this featured in this documentary who broke off from the squad, they're saying that not only would Tiffany direct them to kiss on camera because that's going to get views, but also she was saying things like, well, when are you going to do more than kiss? Like we need to go a little further. So she's pushing these kids to go to places that they absolutely should not be going on camera or off camera. And but especially on camera in front of the world and making them do things that they're not comfortable with, that they're not ready for. And it's just all so disgusting. And where the dark side of child influencing really comes in is that you have to acknowledge that the reality is it's not just a bunch of children their age who are following these kidfluencers. It's grown-ass men. I mean, that is a reality, and that is an absolute fact. And grown-ass men are following these kids' content, the child-focused content, and they're sharing these images amongst other gross, predatory men. And that is the reality. Like, we have to just acknowledge that's not just maybe some of their followers are grown men. No, child influencers absolutely have grown men as a decent percentage, if not a large percentage, of their followers. So we have to face that reality and what that means. So if you choose to put your child in front of a camera, and especially if you choose to do it in a way that Tiffany Smith was doing, wearing crop tops and bikinis and doing suggestive things on camera and making them kiss and be a little flirty, and they're like 12, 13, 14, 17 years old, that is playing into child predators, grown men who are following them specifically so that they can, I won't even go there, but you know where I'm going. And in fact, there was one man in particular who posed as a young girl online named Megan. And this man would buy Piper and Tiffany really expensive gifts like Louis Vuitton, purses, Gucci purses, this and that, whatever. But he would do it as long as they gave him the attention that he wanted. So for example, he would call Tiffany's house and she would put Piper on the phone. She'd be like, Piper, Megan's on the phone. She wants to speak with you. And so Piper would have to get on the phone with this grown man and be like, flirt a little bit. I mean, it's just so disturbing, so that they could continue getting expensive gifts. And specifically Tiffany was allowing her daughter and actually probably forcing her daughter to do these things, to play into the desires of this really sick and twisted grown man who's posing as Megan online and buying gifts for this young girl and her mother, so long as they give him the attention that he wants. And some of that attention was just disgusting. It just is, Tiffany was all about this. I mean, most parents would absolutely guard their children from this type of behavior, but not Tiffany. Now, she ran toward it. Like, she embraced it. She was all about it. Okay, and I want to offer just a quick trigger warning before I get into this part, because it is disturbing. But it is described in this documentary by Corinne. She was the OG squad member with Piper. She says in this docuseries that Tiffany would ship out Piper's underwear to old men because they liked to smell it. I mean, and she says that Tiffany fully acknowledged this. And she's like, don't be such a prude. Like, come on. Like, you know what I mean? It's all innocent. Like, what's it hurting for me to send off, this underwear? And, we get all this money and gifts for it. So like, whatever, she just like, I got to get my bag, girl. Like, I'm just going to do whatever it takes, even if it's doing disgusting things with my daughter's undergarments. Then the docuseries starts to talk about this very common practice called botting in social media influencing. So apparently a lot of influencers, it's very common for content creators to buy a bunch of followers, bots, for really cheap from places like Bangladesh and other areas of the world. But it's described in the documentary that if you buy bots, you don't get to monetize the views and engagement from those bots. But it's just basically fulfills optics to draw more people into your channel so that you can then monetize off those real people. So I kind of look at it like a really long line outside of a retail store, like Trader Joe's. Okay, perfect example. Recently, Trader Joe's came out with this like seasonal little tote bag in all these cute little colors. And people just went wild for these bags. And they're standing in these long ass lines just to get a little $12 tote bag. Like it's nothing. But I think that people see the frenzy that's created or the long line effect. And they want in too, like they have FOMO. They're like, oh my gosh, if all these other people want this bag, clearly I need to get this bag and I'll stay in line for 10 hours just to get a $12 tote bag from Trader Joe's that's limited time availability. And so I think that that was kind of like the purpose of buying bots, is that if I have 100,000 followers, but I buy a bunch of bots and now all of a sudden I have 500,000, other people watching my content might hit that follow button faster because they're like, oh my gosh, this has got to be somebody legit. They've got 500,000 followers. Let me get in on this. And so it helps content creators in the long run, but not the short term, if that makes sense. And Tiffany apparently didn't want any of the squad members' parents to be friends. She would keep them apart from each other. And this is a really classic control tactic. You see this in like cult leader behavior, scam artist behavior. They purposely try to separate their targets because together there's power in numbers. But if you keep them apart from one another, they can't go and share information and share, evidence and basically information that would get the scam artist or the cult leader or the master manipulator that is Tiffany caught. So she was really good about keeping the parents apart and not wanting them all to kind of like mingle with each other and be friends. And this is just classic control tactic. And then there were the cringy prank videos that Piper and her squad would do. And again, prank videos for some unknown reason, because I do not get it. Prank videos do very well online. They go viral. Like we've all seen the guy sleeping in his bed and the wife comes and puts like shaving cream on his hand and then wakes him up or tickles his nose and he's like, oh my God, I got shaving cream on my nose. It's, to me, so cringy. Like it's so overdone. It's so oversaturated. And it's like, how many more times are we going to see the same prank over and over? And I don't know. Anyway, but Tiffany saw, she was the master copier of other ideas. And so she saw that these prank videos were going viral. So of course she makes the squad do all these pranks on each other. And there were some of the pranks, like the one where one of the squad members got arrested by fake cops. And this really traumatized some of the other squad members because they thought it was real. So she didn't give a shit if, of the emotional turmoil that she's putting these kids in just to pull off a damn prank for clicks and views. And it just, again, I just find it so cringy, these prank videos like, ha ha ha, we're just kidding. Like it's a prank. I don't know. I'm ready to move on to other trends. I don't know about you, but these prank videos I cannot swipe faster when I see it, come onto my TikTok algorithm, which it really doesn't very often because I think my algorithm knows me pretty well. I'm like, pass, skip. And at some point, somebody calls CPS on Tiffany. And my thought is it was probably one of the former squad members' parents, and good on them. And so CPS interviews a couple of the squad members and they lie and say that Tiffany's great. They love what they do. They love working for her. With her. She gives them all the meals in the world, whatever they said to them. But apparently this was all a lie because Tiffany had forced them to lie to CPS. She'd gotten to them before CPS showed up and was like, hey, you need to tell them that I'm great. Don't tell them about this. Don't tell them about that, yada, yada. And so they did, allegedly. And so nothing ever really came of the CPS investigation. I mean, the optics of it were that CPS shows up. They come to this really big, nice house that these girls are living in. They're very well dressed, the kids are. And so everything kind of tracks for CPS and they're like, well, nothing to see here. There's a big house and they're dressed well. So I guess everything's fine. And so nothing ever came of that CPS investigation. And that's a damn shame. Then in 2022, there is a lawsuit filed against Tiffany Smith and Hunter Hill. And the plaintiffs in the lawsuit are 11 former Piper Rockelle squad members. And they're basically suing Tiffany Smith and Hunter, at least initially, for sabotaging their YouTube channels, because after they left the squad, their views tanked even before anybody in the public knew that they were no longer part of the squad. And so these parents surmise that, like, this is, we handed over the keys to the castle, like basically all of our logins to our kids' YouTube channels over to Hunter. So, theoretically, he and Tiffany would be able to go and like sabotage our YouTube channels. And apparently their YouTube channels they never recovered. Like they were never the same after that. And so they decided to bring a lawsuit against Tiffany and Hunter for sabotaging their YouTube channels, which they were never able to be the same again. But eventually, as is part of any legal process, there is a discovery process where you're gathering more and more evidence. It's being traded between the two parties, the plaintiffs and the defendants. And during this time, the plaintiffs learn a lot more of what was actually going on with Tiffany and Hunter at the helm and these squad members being exploited and downright abused. So then the lawsuit turns into not only suing Tiffany and Hunter for sabotaging the former squad members' YouTube channels, now they're suing for emotional and sexual abuse, battery and financial exploitation, among other things. So it got elevated. And one of the former squad members tells the audience of this documentary about a character named Lenny. And apparently this is a persona that Tiffany took on off camera. So it's an off-camera persona where she would like speak to the kids in a weird voice as Lenny, but it was basically her vehicle to express her sexual thoughts and desires. Gross. And she would use Lenny to do it. So again, I think psychologically, now I'm no expert, but I think this was Tiffany's knowing that what she's saying to these kids about these sexual comments, it's highly inappropriate, but she can distance herself a little bit from it if she does it as Lenny, another off-camera persona or character. And it just but it was Tiffany. Like, let's be clear and not mince words. This was not Lenny. This was not some other character. This is Tiffany allegedly saying very highly disturbing and sexual comments to these kids who are minors. And it's just all so gross, but weird that she would do it in other personas. Just like she wanted to get out her, negative comments about the squad members, didn't want to do it. It's like she wasn't like brave enough to do it herself. So she freaking creates these other characters, the dog to do the bullying, or Lenny to do her like sexual communication toward the kids. It's all weird and disturbing. Eventually, YouTube ends up demonetizing Piper Rockelle's YouTube channel. And this is a big deal because that is the bread and butter for Tiffany, for Hunter, for Piper. Like, this is a very big deal. And basically, they had like some higher up at YouTube, maybe he's the CEO. In any event, he talks about the fact that, under the terms of, the agreement between creators and YouTube, that YouTube is allowed under their contract to demonetize creators' channels for various reasons. And I guess one of those reasons is that if a particular content creator like Piper Rockelle is damaging the creator ecosystem as a whole, then she can be demonetized. And so that's what they did. So then Tiffany has Piper move over to a new social media platform called Brand Army. And this is a paywall type deal. So basically, any creators who are on Brand Army, you have to pay a few bucks each month, let's say 5, 10, 20, 30, whatever it is, in order to see their content. So it's behind a paywall. And Piper is on Brand Army. And it's described in this documentary that full-grown adults can still pay to see Piper's content. And it's also described that Piper's content is getting more and more inappropriate, like not full-blown, like, what do they call it? OnlyFans type stuff, but just flirty, less clothing, more makeup, like just doing a little bit more sexually explicit movements and gestures, and her clothing is a little more suggestive. And again, Piper is a minor. I fault her 0% for what is happening to her. Like, this is not Piper's issue. This is an issue with her mom, and Hunter. He's a grown adult who's allowing this to go on as well. It's not Piper's fault. Like, she's a child. She cannot be blamed for this. But it is a fact that when you see her on camera, you can see the gradual move toward more and more kind of like sexually explicit. I don't want to say explicit, but sexually suggestive content, I'll say. And again, that's not Piper's fault. And also, Piper through all of this is feeling the pressure of paying the mortgage, feeding, 70, 100 cats, however many it's up to at this point. So she, as a child, is carrying the burden of being the bread and butter for her entire household, her mom, Hunter, everybody. Like, if Piper's not making money, then none of them are making money, and the mortgage doesn't get paid. Food's not on the table. The cats don't get fed. So that is a lot of pressure to put on a child. And that's what's happening with so many family vloggers, I would say, as well as child influencers or kidfluencers. Shortly after this lawsuit is filed against Tiffany and Hunter, the FBI actually reaches out to all the parents and the kids involved in the lawsuit, and they interview them. Basically, a very high degree of confidence that they're going to actually win this case, which I think is why the federal government versus the state courts has a much higher conviction percentage. I think it's above 90% conviction rate, because they go into cases almost knowing that they're going to win. And so the government does not step in at this time. And so as it stands today, there are no criminal charges against anyone in this whole debacle. And with the rise of child influencers and family vlogger accounts and things like that, there are a lot of people advocating to get child influencing seen as labor. So therefore, they can get the laws surrounding child labor changed to include child influencers and content creators. But it's described in the documentary that the lawmakers are basically a bunch of old fogies who don't quite understand this industry. It's just kind of like not within their realm of understanding. And so the laws have not changed yet. And so the same laws that apply to child actors, maybe even singers, they don't quite apply to child influencers. So it's still kind of the wild, wild west. And these kids do need protection. And influencing is not a hobby. It is a job for so many children and adults. So a lot of people don't take influencing seriously. And I know influencing, influencers, the term can be really kind of like really cringe. Nobody really wants to say, oh, I'm an influencer anymore, because it's just cringe. But influencing, content creating is a job. And I'm one of those people who makes a living now full time off of creating and hosting podcasts and my YouTube channel and my social media presence. I'm monetizing all of it. That is what I do full time. So it is a job. So I'm here to say that it is a job and it is work, and it takes a lot of time and research, and there's a lot that goes into actually getting to the point of pressing record on a camera. But especially when it comes to child influencers, when it's their job, they need protection. They need to have child labor laws that protect them and don't allow parents or anybody else, any other adult, to take advantage of these kids and exploit them in a way that they're not really getting the money that they've earned. They're not getting proper breaks. They're being put in front of the camera in a way that's too sexually explicit. They need all those protections. In 2024, a settlement was reached in the lawsuit against Tiffany Smith and Hunter Hill. And they basically settled with the 11 plaintiffs for $1.85 million, which sounds kind of like a lot, but that has to be split amongst 11 people, 11 plaintiffs. So it's under $200,000 each. And I would say for what they went through, it's not nearly enough, because there are former squad members who are describing moments when Tiffany allegedly jumped on top of them, put her body on top of them, forced herself on top of them, and made them very uncomfortable and did uncomfortable and disturbing and what I would say illegal things to these children. There's another former squad member who talks about a time when Tiffany invited her into the bathroom to see her naked, allegedly. So if those things happened, that is highly illegal, but still no criminal charges have been brought against Tiffany at this point. And so to get just under $200,000 for what these kids went through, I just don't think it's nearly enough. And of course, Tiffany Smith has a brand new squad, and she's continuing to create content all around Piper and her squad. So she's just continuing to exploit, in my opinion, her own daughter, these other kids, because she's so money hungry. She's so used to living a certain way. She doesn't want that to stop. So what does she do? She just replicates what she had before. And even though she's been sued, and the FBI has been somewhat involved, she still continues to make this disturbing, what I say is very exploitative content. And I think it's very unfortunate that criminal charges haven't been filed. Based on these kids' accounts, it sounds like there were illegal things going on, giving alcohol to minors, allegedly, forcing yourself on top of minors, allegedly, kissing a minor on camera when he didn't ask for it or okay it. Kissing any minor, a minor can't consent. So forcing yourself onto another minor on camera, allegedly, that is all illegal behavior. So I just am curious to see where this goes, if anywhere. And I'm worried about Piper. I think a lot of people are worried about Piper. Certainly her former cast members, squad members are worried about her. She'll be an adult soon, so it'll be curious to see if she gets herself out of this toxic environment that she's been in for so long. And I would say not only toxic, but downright abusive, in my opinion. And I agree, laws surrounding child influencers, content creators, if you're a part of like a family vlogger unit or whatever that is, those laws need to change. These kids need protection. They need to get their education. They need to get proper meals, proper rest. They should not be paraded around in an adult-like manner in any way. And if there are times when they say, I'm tired, I don't want to film, then they shouldn't have to film. But I do think that family vloggers, not all of them, but I'm just saying, I think many of them really push their kids to the limit because they get used to the money that comes in. And I don't think it's okay. And I'm hearing that a lot of family vloggers have now moved out of the state of California, for example, because we have stricter laws here that protect kids. And they're moving to places like, I think, Tennessee, where the laws are less strict surrounding what you can and can't do with kids who are content creators. And it's just gross because I'm going to say a lot. This is my opinion. I think a lot of family vloggers are putting a paycheck before the well-being of their children. And they can argue all day long that my kids enjoy this and this, and this. That's fine. Say what you want to say. But I know that these kids are being pushed to film at times when they don't want to film. And I think that's gross. I think that they are being pushed beyond the limits of what kids should be pushed to. Kids need to be kids, and they are not a paycheck. And if you choose to put your child on camera, that's one thing, and maybe that's okay. But I think that you have to listen to the children. And if they're too tired to do it, don't do it. Give them a break. If you are finding yourself pushing your child to do things that are more adult-like in nature, that is also wrong, because you think it's good for clicks and views and monetary gain. I just think that that is all just, I think it's a breeding ground. It creates an environment for parents to exploit their kids, even though maybe that's not what they meant to do from the jump. It's what they maybe eventually end up doing because the paycheck is just so good. Thanks so much for watching and listening to this episode of Serial Streamers. Again, make sure you are subscribed to my YouTube channel at Jami on Air. All of the video versions of the Serial Streamers episodes are available there on my YouTube. If you just want an audio version, it's available on my podcast, Murderish. Murderish is available in all podcast players, so make sure you're following or subscribing there. And make sure you're following me on social media. I'm at Jami on Air. That's Jami on all social media platforms, specifically TikTok and Instagram, because that's where all of us serial streamers go and talk about these wild documentaries. I want your hot takes, your unpopular opinions. It is a safe space, and I love to engage with anybody who is also watching these true crime documentaries. So make sure you're following me on social media at Jami on Air. And remember, be that bitch when it comes to your safety. Always cover your drinks, keep your lights on at night, and always trust your gut. If something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. Stay safe out there.